I do want to make it clear, when you hear me say F10, I'm ending the video. It stops the recording. It's a tick of mine that I always do at F10 before I end the video, so it's just a little heads up there. Alright, so let's go into splines. The one spline I use an awful lot is CV under NURBS, circle, pop it in here. Circle works out really nice. It wraps around, it's a simple curve. I'm a big fan of it. Some people like making cubes, and the cubes have so many more lines, it makes the rigs a little bit more complicated, and kind of you can get confused of which control you're selecting. But a circle does a job very well. It wraps around the object nicely. If you do want to create a box, a lot of you would want to go into, or just even a square, you would go under square, and you would create a square here. The problem with this is as soon as you deselect it and reselect it, you basically, I guess Maya thought it was a smart idea to make it actually just 4 lines instead of one continuous line. If you look in the hypergraph, you have a bunch of splines, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and a group node underneath to connect them all as one. So it's not a very, it doesn't work well for rigging. So I'm going to delete this. But if you want to create a square, you can. If you want to create a cube, you can. So I'm going to come in a little bit closer. I'm going to go to Modify, Create, CV Curve Tool, and I'm going to put the option box up in here. I'm going to snap it to the grid, and put basically your setting should be here. Let's go to Snap, and now let's create a square. But the problem is, as you can see, I'm not creating a square, I created a teardrop. If you want to create a square, select your CV curve tool. Right now it's 3 cubic, go to 1 linear. And that will allow you to create a square. As you can see, the pivot point's way over here. Sometimes that's not going to be very useful if the pivot point's over there. Quick way to get it to the center, go to Edit, Modify, Center Pivot Point, Shift Control. Something that you're going to use a lot, and now it's in the center of the control. I'm going to move this. The freeze transformation center pivot points, I often like to have them together. So we have a square. Now let's build a cube. If you want to build a cube, you're going to have to use multiple viewports. So I'm going to build a cube over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm getting a little lost right here because it's the geometry is right in the way. So let's find there. Okay, let's go over here now. And let's come so you can see these are the curves. 1, 2, 3, and then so I'm over on this corner. So let's come over 1. Let's come back up. You can start seeing the cube be built. Come back up. Come across. I'm going to hit the backspace so I gotta come to there, come back across. Now we got a cube. If you're missing a spot, just kind of click backtrack to where you needed to go, and kind of get that line if you miss that line. Doesn't matter if you go over the lines multiple times. Center the pivot point out, and now we have a cube. I'm going to turn off Snap to Grid. Center all pivot points. Pivot, center, center. Make them a little bit bigger to see them. Alright. And hopefully you guys know, I'm going to duplicate this, how to manipulate the splines after you make them. Select it, right click, vertices, and then you can manipulate the curves. And if you select like the corners, you can actually scale them out and create interesting shapes. I don't often do very interesting shapes because they become more distracting than useful for a rig. But we got shapes. Make sure you name them. I'll call this one just flower, cube, square, circle. So when you go back to your hypergraph, it's easy to understand exactly what's in your scene and what's each node is. As you can see, there's spline, spline, splines, and this one it's actually what I call a group node symbol. I don't know why whenever you duplicate something it gives you that symbol, but if you want to have it to be its true symbol, you think it's like, wait, that's not the right symbol, go to graph, hit rebuild, and it will turn it into the proper symbol for that object. Like polygons are actual polygons, cameras is a little camera, spline is a nice curve. So they try their best to make it user friendly. Alright, so we have multiple curves. Now, a important thing for rigs is kind of just like having the controls pop a little bit better for when they're wrapped around model, which we want it to color them. If you hit Control A, we're going to go to make sure you're under the shape and not the flower part, the original name. So spline shape, or come down to Object Display, Drawing Overrides, Enable, and now we can change its color. Left clicking, and I like to choose a nice hot red, yellow, bright blue, and sometimes like these are my main colors I use. I use the red for the right side, yellow for the left side, blue straight down the middle. They're very different from each other, and they often pop off a model. The other ones, I like that one too. It's a nice strong color that separates, but they all seem very different from each other. Alright, one thing I do want to make clear, there's two colors you want to stay away from. I wonder if anyone can guess what. Those two colors are white and green. And the reasoning why is when you select something, it turns it green. The last thing is you want to color something remotely of that color, so I stay away from all greens. The other one is white, because if you hold down Shift, and I always hold down Shift to Control, and select something else, it turns it white. So what if the control was white, and then you want to have multiple things selected? It's like, well, did I accidentally deselect it, or is it still selected? So stay away from green and white for coloring things, because they're not the smartest thing to color things. I also stay away from black. I try to stay away from black and gray, because those are often the background colors. I like the light gray to work on. Again, if you want to change the background, hit Alt B, and that'll pop you through them. So now I've shown you how to color controls, manipulate controls, and center pivot points out.